You are in the making. All new episodes air on Thursdays at 10 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. We hope you enjoy. Please follow along. Was there a moment when you realized this isn't a job, it's really a calling?
There were a number of moments. Other opportunities have presented themselves over the last 19 years that I've been with this organization.
How has your experience influenced you how to lead the Bee?
I always look at, especially, we call it Bee Week, when our national competition is. I've looked at the experience for all of the kids who are there, not just the champion, not just the finalist. Is there a time that you stayed too long, and what did it teach you?
You can be deeply good at something and still feel like you're shrinking in it.
What make one organization worth building with long-term?
Best organizations are the ones that allow their people to evolve. Not just scale their title, but shift their shape. Welcome back to In the Making, the podcast where we explore decisions, pivots, and reinventions that shape our lives and career. I'm your host, Michael Betz, and I'm also the author of the book, In the Making, which dives deep into those exact moments. Today's guest is someone who truly embodies what it means to grow within a calling. Corrie Loeffler, Executive Director of the Scripps National Spelling Bee. From competitor to college volunteer to leader of one of America's most iconic educational institutions, Corrie's journey is rooted in purpose, persistence, and believing in the magic of staying. We're diving into leadership, legacy, and what happens when the best pivots is actually staying put. Welcome to In the Making, Corrie.
Thank you so much, Michael. I'm really happy to be here.
Well, I'm so happy that you're here. And on a side note, you were talking to one of the world's worst spellers. So I always was jealous as a kid growing up of all of these people that could spell. But thank God for AI and Grammarly that I have upped my game. So we'll be back with Corrie in our next episode and deep dive into her story. In the Making, out today in print, digital, on Amazon. Get your copy today at amzn.to/4C5S365. The link is in the bio. Let's build something real together. In the Making. Welcome back to In the Making. So Corrie, from speller to storyteller, growing into leadership, you've been with the Scripps National Spelling Bee now since 2006. That's crazy, especially in our generation. But your connection started even earlier. Can you walk us through what it was like going from a speller on stage to leading the entire national organization?
Yeah, it really is a dream come true. It's something I didn't think was actually possible when I was a kid, but my first experience with the Scripps National Spelling Bee, I was actually 7 years old, and I went to watch my brother compete as an 8th grader in 1990. And it was my first time on an airplane flying from Central California to Washington, D.C., and getting to this big fancy hotel and seeing all these kids who had similar interests to me, even at 7 years old. And for me at that point, it was like, I think I can do this too. And it was almost more of a social motivation than even an educational motivation. Like, I want this amazing prize to go for a week to the nation's capital, have all these great parties and tours and experiences with kids who are so much like me. And I wasn't even thinking about the fact that I would be getting this incredible education just through studying too. So I went back, I competed 3 years when I was in middle school, and then I hadn't had enough. So throughout high school, I volunteered at the regional level in California. And then in college, I was a volunteer at the national level. After that, I went on to work for a couple of nonprofits and then got a call, would you like to move to Cincinnati and work for the Spelling Bee full time? And thinking back to those middle school years, I remember, do you remember those things where you used to fill out like what you want to be when you grow up? And it's,
yes,
your school picture's there and it's, here's my favorite color, here are my friends, here's what I want to be. And there were always a bunch of things there for me. But one of the things that I would put was work for the National Spelling Bee. But when I moved here in 2006 to take what I thought was going to be a job for 2 years max and then go back to school after that, I was like, how could I not take take this opportunity to live out a dream that I've had since I was a kid And at that point, there were only 2 full-time employees of the Scripps National Spelling Bee. When I came and then another woman came on at the same time, we doubled to 4, and now we're at 13. So still a pretty small organization of full-time employees, but just, yeah, it's been a crazy journey, and one that when I tell people, they're just like, yeah, I guess you were meant to do this.
Well, it's just crazy because, everybody knows what the spelling bee is. It's almost like a brand like Tide or, Coca-Cola. If were educated in the United States every time of the year, I would never get picked. But I do
We all
have a
have our
funny
strengths,
note.
Michael. It's good.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I bring everybody along to collaborate, to help edit me. So yeah, I have a funny story though about talking about when we were younger, going through those moments when we're taking personality exams and whatnot. Anyways, my nephew was in kindergarten and we were at his graduation. He loved going to a certain store. The teachers asked the kids when they're going on stage, what they want to be when they're older. He said he wanted to be the greeter at Walmart.
Hey,
And so, yeah,
friendly, outgoing, we're people focused, client focused. These are all great skills. I think
I
that's
just
awesome.
thought we all thought it was hilarious. And it was like one of those, moments where you're just like, only a kid would say that. So, kind of talking about, was there a moment, in this, kind of transition? I know you said you were initially coming here for, 2 years. Was there a moment when you realized this isn't a job, it's really a calling? And can you maybe expand upon that?
Yeah, there were a number of moments. Other opportunities have presented themselves over the last 19 years that I've been with this organization. But really, every time that a different opportunity somewhere else came up, it was me thinking, have I done everything that I can do for this organization that I'm so passionate about? Have I given all I could to make this opportunity available to as many kids as possible, and to make it a really aspirational opportunity for kids? And the answer was always no. Like I've always felt like I had more to give. And I've also filled kind of now every role in this organization. So there've been multiple new opportunities that have come up, and I've never once been bored in this role. And so at a certain point, when it's just so deep in you, and it's been deep in me since the beginning, obviously, but there's just this indescribable thing that's not replaceable with another opportunity, even if that comes with, other great perks or other great experiences. There's something so fulfilling about working on something that have been personally transformed by and believe in the transformative power of for children.
Oh, I love that. And it doesn't hurt that you've gone all in for Cincinnati. You met your husband, you had your, child here. So I think we're really lucky that we got this transplant, and we hope that you never boomerang back to California. So
well, I have to say too, like Cincinnati has been so welcoming from the very beginning. So in the last several years, yes, everything that you've said has happened. I feel my family is here now, but in the 15 years before that, I just really felt like Cincinnati is a place that you can make a difference easily, that you can like dig your claws into without much resistance. And I've just felt so at home here. And so again, like your passions are celebrated in Cincinnati. It's a great place.
Well, and like Cincinnati gets, kind of, shunned for saying, some people think it's a cliquey city. And I also am a transplant. I don't think that. I think that, the whole where'd you go to high school and stuff like that. That's like that in a lot of cities. But I think like people magnate towards each other, and we've magnated this past year towards each other through mutual friends. And I think you're going to have a great experience the more you put into it. You can live in a B or C city, not saying Cincinnati's that, but you have the opportunity to put your best efforts to make it an A experience.
Absolutely.
So I love that. So now a little bit in behind the scenes, is there any misconceptions people may have about the bee behind the scenes, or, just the whole experience?
Totally. There are quite a few. One, just on a professional level, there are a couple different reactions that I get when I tell people that I work for the Scripps National Spelling Bee or that I'm the executive director. One is that a full-time job? And yes, it absolutely is. So my team works with 24,000 schools across the
Crazy.
country, 200 regional organizations that run spelling bees across the country and around the world. We support all kinds of different initiatives, and it's really a year-round program that provides so much learning at the school level. So that's where we put the majority of our emphasis. It's not necessarily what you see on television, but then, this time of year leading up to our national competition at the end of May, we really are focused on that really event planning and also broadcast and production planning because we're a national television event. So it's definitely a full-time job for quite a few people. In fact, we wish we could have a few more people, maybe someday if we keep growing. So that's certainly one misconception just professionally. So another misconception just about the competition side of the bee, only for those kids who have super, super high spelling skills. So the kids that you see on our finals broadcast, those top 10 to 12 kids, right? Where we see the biggest impact of our program is at the classroom level, where we have millions of kids who are just practicing words that they'll use in their schooling in their everyday life and learning to care about language, even if that's just for a competition, right? And at that level too, they're getting this experience of standing up in front of their class, of either succeeding, making it through one round, feeling what that feels like, or not hitting their goals and feeling what it feels like to bounce back, to understand that it's okay that they're not the winner on that day. Like, these are important life lessons to learn and important skills to have. So when I hear people tell me, oh, I could never have competed in the spelling bee, I'm such a terrible speller, my reaction is always, you would be fine. You would have a place in this competition and an experience that would stick with you for the rest of your life too. So one thing that we're trying to do at the Bee is just make it more accessible, that they're not just seeing the winning word from our finals on the news or on TikTok or however they see it, after our competition, and thinking, oh, could never do that. That really there's a place for everybody.
I just love that, kind of micro approach you just took there, because it is important. It's about development. And at the end of the day, this is an educational program, and, giving, people, like you said, a toolkit to be successful in public speaking, have confidence, but also I love how you mentioned it's okay to fail. That's what my book's really about. It's like the things that I've learned that gave me thicker skin that can really advert, other people who may be going through different experiences in different phases of their lives, that I've done that to help them maybe be one step ahead of what I was from what I learned. So I think that's amazing. So moving towards, your own experience as a competitor, and how cool about your brother, because you actually saw the whole actual national thing real time. And then following in his footsteps. As a competitor, how has your experience influenced you how to lead the Bee? Like, was there lessons learned? Were there opportunities where you're like, if I would do it, I could see it this way? Or was it always kind of a dream story for you?
It's definitely influenced the way that I lead the Bee. I always look at, especially, we call it Bee Week, when our national competition is. I've looked at the experience for all of the kids who are there, not just the champion, not just the finalists, right? We have 243 kids who will be joining us this May to compete, but also to be celebrated as champions of their region. That's a big deal. And so, yes, it is important that we have the competition. Yes, that broadcast and the finals is the biggest platform and advertisement for our program that is a year-round program. But it's not about that confetti moment, that trophy holding up moment for me. One of the things that I say is, we're not really looking for the best speller in the country. If we were looking for the best speller in the country, we would give a test, right? And it would be the same test for all of them, and whoever had the best score is the winner. But we're looking at so much more than that. And there is so much luck that plays into this competition, that I never focus on that champion. I focus on, let's make every single kid who comes to that event leave knowing how to dream bigger, seeing themselves on a national stage and knowing what that can do for a kid, just that transformative power. So that's how it influences me on the national level, I would say. And then, you know, people always ask me, so you competed, well, did you win the National Spelling Bee? And no, I did not. I never won. And I'm so glad that I didn't. You know, at the time, that was kind of devastating for me as a kid to really, really want something, to work so hard for something. You know, in 7th grade, I got 6th place, and I tied for 6th place in the national competition. And so I was coming back for my final year, and I was like, okay, this is my year. I worked so hard, you know, hours every day, just drilling, studying, learning patterns and roots and all of this. You know, there's a lot of media attention on, even then, even in the 90s, there's even more now, but there was a film crew that came to my hometown and followed me at school and to cheerleading practice and everything else, and like watched me study and made this package about me. And it was like, this is my year, I'm going to win. And then I got out in the 2nd round of the competition. And what that taught me about what you really learn from competing is something that I take into the messaging that we have at every single level of the competition. And that I really want people to take away from this, more than just the words that they learn, which are very important too, and help us, you know, make our way in the world. And something that nobody can ever take away from you, that education. Like the fact that I never took home a trophy doesn't bother me at all. It's that I know that my prize for competing is everything I gained that nobody can ever take away from me.
That's beautiful. I just, in my head, I'm seeing young Corrie and like the show on TLC, Dance Moms, like where it's really intense and your mom's pushing you, like drilling you. No, I'm just teasing, but in my
mom was definitely my coach. So
that's awesome. That's awesome. Is your
there was
mom and
slightly
dad
less
both good
makeup
spellers?
involved. What'd you say?
Obviously, your mom and dad are great spellers.
Yeah, and my mom is somebody who, I think, you know, one of the things we talk about with the spelling bee is just the curiosity that learning about language can push you toward. And for me, learning words, even just straight from the dictionary, really lit up my imagination.
Yeah.
Like, I grew up in a small town in Central California, like agriculture country. There was literally a
Not
cow
what
pasture.
you think of when you're like, I'm from California.
Right, no, not that. Like a cow pasture across from my high school kind of situation. Yeah. So learning about the world just through words and realizing, and the spelling bee giving me that faith in myself that I could go so many places in this world. Every new word was like a new experience that I could have someday, right? So dreaming about what life can be and all the colors, just shades of excitement you can have from a life. And so my mom was always about instilling curiosity, still is about instilling curiosity. And so I think that's the biggest influence, even beyond her helping me study and everything, was just like, find the delight in this, find the joy in language and learning. So that's I'm so grateful to her for that. And that's what I'm hoping to give to my kids too.
Moms are the best. Like when I got to write my dedication for the book, I wrote something really special for my mom, and she didn't know about it. And when she got the book, and now she's like, I carry it in my bag and I show everybody. And it's not because you wrote a book, and it's not because you wrote that. It's just because you're you. And I'm like, I love you, moms. But anyways, so I had a different kind of take in life, and you know, I wrote about it in the book. You know, I was climb that corporate ladder. I didn't stay because I wanted to hire, you know, formulas. If you leave a company, you make a lot more if you jump. And so I jumped a lot. And then I also, you know, really rose quickly. But it's not always for everybody. I think it's important to remember, yes, we may feel burnout. We may feel stuck. But remember the pros of what, you know, you love about your certain situation, and always outweigh it. So, you know, in the book, I talk about how, you know, we're often taught to seek the next big thing, but sometimes growth happens in a place. What have you learned from choosing to stay when the world tells you to jump?
Yeah, I mean, especially like you mentioned, our generation, I'm very much an outlier, being with one company for 19 years and barely having a career before that. I think the thing that I have learned is choosing to stay has allowed me to take on so many new things that I never knew could be part of this job, right? I keep learning so much. And the more, as my career has grown here at the Bee, I've been able to take things off my plate, give them to other people. And that letting go of certain tasks, projects, activities, not only gives other people opportunity, but opens you up to everything else that could come. And we've had so many incredible partnerships that I've been able to explore. I've been able to go all over the world with the Spelling Bee, have so many unique experiences, whether that's, being backstage at Jimmy Kimmel or a number of other shows, or, meeting incredible celebrities, politicians, being able to.
I love that you didn't use incredible in front of the politician word. No, I just too soon.
Hey, I got to be in the Oval Office with President Obama.
That's amazing.
That was pretty incredible.
That's like a lifetime.
I've consulted with TV shows in the UK. I've been at spelling bees in Dubai and South Africa. And there's just so much that this organization has given me that, like, during the hard times when it's like, why do I keep doing this? It's just, there's something so compelling about this entire world of opportunity that this organization has been for me.
Well, and I think it goes back to that, you're providing opportunity to these kids because you're helping them, see the world in a bigger, brighter space. And whether it's, increasing their vocabulary, it's giving them the opportunity to compete regionally outside of their small hometown, or if they make it to the big leagues and make it to DC, it's just a really cool thing. And I'm glad you stayed. And I'm glad because, as our relationship continues to evolve, there is so much behind the scenes, just that 24,000 schools, and it wouldn't happen without those schools. I believe that's, a big funding source for, the Bee. And so I think it's so important that you've created such an opportunity to have a macro experience that build the brand, but also such a grassroots experience to engage the local communities. And so, I think learning from this, and one of my key takeaways, especially this last part, is that some of the most powerful transformations happens not when we leave, but when we lean in. So more with Corrie when we come back, and more about the Spelling Bee, her special life. And I think we're hosting an adult Spelling Bee coming up to support a good cause. So more to come back when we return. Dun, dun, dun. It's my favorite round and the audience's favorite too. We see you, we hear you. Comment, like, and subscribe to the podcast. But it's our fire lightning round questions. Corrie, what's your favorite word you've ever spelled? Or heard spelled?
Or heard spelled, I would have to say sardoodledom.
Okay.
The kid got this word and could not say it without laughing. He had like a full giggle fit trying to spell sardoodledom. It's a very silly sounding word, and that moment is going to stick with me forever.
Can you use that in a sentence?
Oh gosh, what does it mean? It's
no, it's just a joke. Little bee humor. Ha ha ha. Okay, so
it's something to do with like parody or something like that, I think, but I couldn't give you the exact definition right now.
Yeah, whoever came up with that word. I'm sorry. So you mentioned, you were in the National Spelling Bee a couple of times. What's the last word that you competed in that you may have not won the title for?
So in 8th grade, the word I missed in round 2 is probably a word that everyone listening knows how to spell: dispel.
Oh, did you 1 or 2?
I put 2 L's at the end, just like spelling bee, and I was like, P-I-S-P-E-L-L. Okay, I'm going on to the next round. And then the bell rang, and I just was devastated.
Fell to the ground.
Yeah, not quite. But
okay, one of our popular questions, because I've been actually having a lot of like national bands on lately. What's a favorite jam or band that you're listening to now, or has been a constant in your life?
Yeah, right now, everything that I'm listening to is from shows on Disney Junior because I have a 3.5-year-old. So if anybody's super stoked to hear Sheriff Callie's Wild West or whatever it's called, that's on regular rotation for us. I've been revisiting some bands lately. That what I've been playing in the car recently has been the album "The Coloring Book" by Chance the Rapper. So that's been my jam and my just pump up music as I get into my busiest season of the year.
And also to stay hip.
It's in 2016, so I feel like not too hip.
And then, is it? Jeez.
Yeah.
So what's a book or a podcast that you're currently listening to besides In the Making?
Yes, obviously. My very favorite podcast is called Off Menu. It is a true delight. It's two British comedians, Ed Gamble and James Acaster, and they interview people about their dream meals. If I had any ambitions of being famous, the only reason would be so that I could be a guest on this podcast. I love food. I love comedy. And hearing people talk about it I could do it all day, every day.
I love that. Lastly, what's something, you would tell a younger Corrie?
I think it is...
Besides how to spell, just spell.
Right, how to spell, just spell, for sure. There's a lot about just failure and resilience that has been the through line. But the one thing I haven't mentioned is, you mentioned being a people pleaser. For me, being a people pleaser is all about not disappointing my mom, right? And I think I wish that I could go back and tell myself, she's never going to be disappointed in you.
Yes.
It's okay. Just go on and succeed and live.
It's
now
so
that
true.
I'm a mom, I understand that, but
Yeah.
I didn't understand it then.
Well, they're here to make your world easier. And, at the end, I think some days with hormones and all of those other things, we forget about that. What's one thing that is still in the making for you?
I think it is, I was talking about prioritization and all that. You talked about putting yourself first. That's something I've been really bad at in my life. And my boss now is she's very into making sure that I'm taking care of myself. And it's been a steady drumbeat for me, right?
You gotta love Caroline.
I need to be in my self-care era. And I'm trying. So that's still in the making. I could get better at sleeping and other things like that. But I'm starting to recognize the importance more and more, the older I get. And so I'm hoping not only will that be impactful for me to focus on that, but also to set an example for the younger folks in my organization and for my kids too.
That we're the age that we can say the younger folks in our organization.
Yes.
Who are we? No. But anyways, Corrie, thank you so much. This was inspiring, personal, and exactly why I started this podcast in the first place. If you haven't picked up your book, go on Amazon, and guess what? It's on almost every platform by now. So you can go to Barnes & Nobles, you can go to Kobo, you can go to libraries. I'm also getting ready to announce my national book tour. So I'll be around the entire country this whole summer. So you'll see me, and if you want to meet me, hit me up, put a comment in the book. But if you haven't ordered, you can go to Amazon today. This was a great, amazing opportunity to really hear an amazing story, legacy, and just highlight a really awesome human. So Corrie, have a great week. And remember, we're all still in the making.
This year, the Bee's keeping it 100. A, B, C.
And the winner!
That is correct.
Wow, what a night.
Watch the Scripps National Spelling Bee live May 28th and 29th at 8/7 Central on ION.
Welcome back to In the Making. I'm here with the Queen Bee herself, Corrie. So, I think you've said, a couple times in the previous segment, your plan was to be at the Bee for 2 years. Now it's been 20. Well, I guess 19. It's going to be your 20th.
It's not the math bee, it's the spelling bee. 20.
Ah!
Round up.
Yeah, I wouldn't have won that one either. Geography bee or bowl, I did good in. What made you keep, recommitting?
Well, I think one of the things for me is when you do those strengths tests, one of my biggest strengths is input, which is not about what I put in, but what I take in, right? So I love to learn. I'm a lifelong learner. I love encouraging learning. It's what gets me going. It's what makes me have a good day, right? Is what, at the end of the day, when you're looking back, was this a good day? Did I learn something? Every single day in this job, I learn something. And a lot of that is from the incredible team that I work with. I have so many passionate people. I think it's a really, really special place to work for an iconic institution, a place that's been around for 100 years, that really maintains this devotion to the original intent of the program, but also is so committed to innovating and increasing access and just increasing the impact that we can have on kids and communities. That constant learning keeps me recommitting to this organization.
Well, I think, we have Taylor Swift, if she taught us anything, we all have different eras of our life. And I know I've gone through mine. I talk about a lot of them in the book, but, our different eras, we're at different stages of our life. So we may have different goals or expectations for ourselves. And being with, the Bee for 20 years now, how do you redefine success, era after era or year after year, or position after position?
Yeah, that's a really good question. How do I redefine success? Because we're all about definitions, obviously.
We are, our culture.
We have so many metrics and all of that strategy for what we want to do with this organization. But the biggest thing when I think about success for me right now, it's not about doing everything, right? I think I've had this almost martyr kind of mentality in the past where it's like, if anything comes our way that could possibly benefit anybody out there or benefit the program or anything, doesn't matter if we don't have time to do it, we're just going to make it happen, right? Whatever it is, whatever the impact level it is, it's like, you're giving me this gift of an opportunity, I'm going to say yes to it. And I think now I'm finally at the point in my life where I am willing to weigh opportunities and opportunity costs and prioritize the items that are going to have the biggest impact. And what's allowed me to do that is having the support of an incredible leader who is my boss, Carolyn Michelli, here at the EW Scripps Company, who asks the right questions and lets me prioritize. And then also it's a whole like 360 thing, right? Like my leadership team that reports into me at the Bee asks great questions too and encourages balance. And that has allowed me to kind of let go of some of the need to do everything. So I guess I'm in my prioritization era and my impact era, right? Like I'm focusing on impact over quality over quantity, let's say that.
I absolutely love that. And, I think that takes, maturity. I think that takes, lessons learned. Burnout. Part of the reasons why we want to leave our job is because we put too much on, and then you don't feel like you're, getting rewarded for the things that you take on. So I think, with age, and we're about the same age, and I think it's one of those things that you kind of learn that skill. So,
I still have to like do a monologue in my head, right? Like, it's
100%.
Okay. You don't have to take on every opportunity. You can let it go. And maybe I will let things go in like 10 years from now. We'll see. But my actions are speaking louder than my inner monologue right now.
Yeah, I think that's great. And that kind of leads into like our worst critic,
Yes.
ourselves. Did you ever wrestle, I guess, with imposter syndrome, especially as you rose up into leadership? I talk in my book that I had a really fruitful early career, and I had a seat at the table, but a lot of times, I didn't feel like my voice could truly be heard because my age or that I was a gay man. So I sometimes felt like I had to tone it down. And that's, me, I don't tone things down, but when I'm toning things down, there's something, something bigger. So I'd love to learn just like how you've overcome that throughout the years.
Yeah. When I first started at Scripps, I was 23 years old. I was the youngest person in the company, and it was a very different company then. It was like a we wear pantyhose to work every day kind of company. Now things are a lot more jeans and sweaters kind of vibe around the company. But I definitely felt like I had to be a different person at work than I was in my real life. So I was going out and seeing local bands like every night when I first moved here to try to, get into the scene and meet people and all that. And then I'd, come to work in a suit the next day and do my job. But as time has gone on, I think one of the plugs for working at a place for a long time is by the time you get to the position that you feel like you were ready for, put in the work and everybody knows you've put in the work. So it's a lot easier to avoid those feelings of imposter syndrome, right? When you've really stuck it out and you've got the receipts to show that you deserve a seat at the table. I think that the biggest point of crisis for me when it came to that was there was a time when in 2021, my previous two executive directors ago, boss had stepped down from the position, and I was like, you know what? I think I'm ready for this. I think I'm going to be able to go for this role, and I did, and I didn't get it. And so to put in so many years and so much, blood, sweat, and tears, literally not blood, but definitely sweat and tears. Over the process, and to finally let myself realize that this was something I really wanted. And then to have that disappointment again, it was kind of going back to my original
7th and 8th grade.
Yes.
I actually was going to segue, and that's hilarious.
I had to learn the same lesson all over again, at 40 years old or whatever. We're going to, be resilient through this and again recommit. Somebody else is coming into this role that I let myself believe I could have, and then didn't get. And it was such a blessing in retrospect to have those couple of years of learning from another leader, figuring out who I needed to be as a leader now that I knew that this was my calling, right? To lead this organization. It was the buffer that I needed. I just didn't know I needed it at that time. And I'm so grateful for that lesson. It was one of the biggest, again, points of imposter syndrome for me of like, how is my reality not matching with the decision maker's reality in this situation? And now I have to kind of step back, fall back. And it was a bit of a slog getting out of that blow really to my self-esteem or self-image. But man, it has paid so many dividends to just have that period to remake myself and be ready for the opportunity when it was there for me.
I think that's beautiful. So I guess what advice would you give to someone feeling restless in a role that may still have more to teach them? That's a big thing, obviously, with the book is, lessons learned, trying to help people who may be in similar situations, or they need to put themselves in your shoes, vice versa. So what would that be for you to share with, the world, the world wide web?
I think when I've been in situations where I was feeling restless in the organization, feeling like, is this really something I can keep giving so much to? It was all about asking myself the hard questions, right? And those are, is there something elsewhere that is going to be a better opportunity for me than everything that I've built and everything I believe in here. I could never I could never see the opportunity more elsewhere for me. But it's such a
Outweigh.
personal decision, you know. It's really about what is compelling you. It's such a personal decision. It's really just about how do you want your life to go, right? Like, what is that path? And if you can feel at peace with it yourself, even if nothing's ever going to be perfect at your organization, in your position, anything else, but if you can feel at peace with it, the decision that you make, then that's the right decision. And for me, staying over and over again has been the decision that gave me peace, even in times of strife.
That's amazing. So, in chapter 6 of In the Making, I write about the moment we realize we're not chasing titles, we're really building trust. Did your role evolve in a way that surprised you?
Yes, absolutely. I think every promotion I ever got prior to getting the executive director role, it was always a surprise. And people are always like, why don't you advocate for yourself? I've been really lucky. I haven't had to, but I've always advocated for everyone around me. And I think that has built trust with my superiors. I'm always looking out for the best interests of my team and my organization. I'm a nurturer by my nature, and so I think I've always been focused on outward what's going on from me, and it's really lifted me up throughout my entire career. So I've had a lot of surprises along the way, and then of course when I let myself want the executive director position, that's when I didn't get it, right?
Yeah.
And so again, there was another surprise a couple years later where it was the right time for me, for the company, for the organization, and I ended up moving into that role. It just was not on my timeline. And it's okay for things to not be on your timeline, You just got to roll with it.
It's life. It's life. I think, this segment, some of my key takeaways is sometimes the most radical career choices is choosing to stay in shape, but then also going back that saying no isn't quitting, saying no isn't negative, saying no is choosing. And a lot of it's you're choosing you, maybe your family, maybe something that's more prioritized. And so I think we, just need to make sure we understand it's always going to be there. There's always opportunity to come back, but put yourself first. So more to come back with Corrie. And guess what? She's going to be flipping the mic. Yep. She's going to be interviewing me because I got to sell books. More when we turn to In the Making. Thanks, Corrie. I'm back. It's Michael Betz, your host of In the Making podcast and the proud president and managing partner of the Proper Group. The past year, transforming the Proper Group has been one of the most exhilarating and rewarding experiences of my life. But when people ask, what is the Proper Group? My honest answer is, we don't fully know. Well, let me explain. We do know. We're just building something different. The Proper Group is 70% baked. Our founder, Larry Burns, laid the foundation. Now we're evolving into an elite collective of fractional C-suite leaders driving real sustainable growth. What we're not is a bloated consultancy with junior talent doing the real work, or a siloed agency only focusing on one or two functions. What we are is a cross-functional growth accelerator, a hands-on execution partner embedding with leadership teams. Because when companies grow, they grow fast. And without the right foundation, that growth won't last. That's where we come in. Let's talk, explore what we're building, and see if this would be the right fit for your team. We're just getting started, and come along for the ride. The Proper Group. We're on the move. Visit us at www.theproper.group.
We're back on the In the Making podcast, and now it's my turn to interview Michael. I can't believe he gives me control of the microphone here. Michael, let's talk about your book. So one of the things that I love in your book, you talk about how tension, not failure, is the sign you're outgrowing a chapter. I like that. I really like that disposition between tension and failure. And I'm interested in what that means to you. And also, is there a time that you stayed too long and what did it teach you?
Those are some deep questions, Corrie. I think one of the hardest lessons I've learned is that you can be deeply good at something and still feel like you're shrinking in it. There was a role when I had the trust, the seat at the table, and I was performing. I had the results, but I also realized I was becoming the version of myself that looked best on paper, really not the one I wanted to live. So I was almost creating an artificial life. I stayed because I didn't want to disappoint the people. I'm a people pleaser. I love people. I'm a connector, and I just didn't want to disappoint those who believed in me. But I'm trying to make them proud. I guess I lost my own clarity and lost my own direction, and then started to feel angst, started to feel exhausted. My body was telling me things. Eventually, I realized I wasn't staying because I loved the work. I was staying because I didn't want to start over. I loved the people. There were good times and there were bad times. Then, there's just a time when you just know it's time. Whether it is help a company go from, 125 million to 500 million in 3 years, and then they get acquired by a private equity. Financially, it was great for me, and I probably could have stayed long term, but I knew the private equity wanted them to get to 5 billion. And I've done everything in my powers to, as its, head of marketing and strategy, to move the needle in ways that I knew how I could. And I didn't feel like I had, the skill set to get them to the next level. And, a lot of my friends, a lot of those people, have stayed. And, I wanted to make sure that they had the best person in the job for that time being. So, I think I love tying in, chapter 4, which, is kind of the invisible season. Sometimes we stay too long because we think discomfort is loyalty, but discomfort is also data. So I hope that kind of resonated.
What were the signs of tension for you? Because it sounds like it was more on a personal level than on a professional level.
Well, I think it's different from, I've been in multiple industries, multiple levels, both from a scalable, I've been in, groups where I ran regions to national to global organizations. And I think the tension was more, I think it's internally knowing, but also not willing to give up like the pros versus the cons. And, perfect example, Scripps is a media company. I was working for a media company, had the best job. Like I was the head of the local newspaper in town. I was head of community relations, head of marketing, head of brand. I got to give to all the, organizations. I had to have a front row seat at every major concert, every major sporting event, but it was also reinventing itself. And I had this huge title, but I know I wasn't getting compensated for that title because I came in at a younger, lower position. And I knew in order for my life to change, in the long term, I had to make the financial decision that over the fringe benefits of, having the access of you have with, media. So I think it's a double-edged sword. The nice thing is I try to be a kind person. I try to build relationships. And so a lot of those people who I met along the way, remember me for not only just having, the budget to donate, the budget to buy tickets for Diamond Club or whatnot. I think they keep me around and invite me to these things because I just try to be a good person. And so I still get a little bit of that, but sometimes when you leave those, certain jobs, you lose a lot of like the fun that comes with it. But, long term, I think, it was a good way for me to, both expand my horizons, not just here locally, but also expand my horizons, financially. And I wouldn't be in a place doing a podcast, writing a book, being the president of a company if I didn't learn from all of that. So
absolutely. I mean, you've mentioned throughout this, you've worked for all different kinds of organizations. As someone who has pretty much worked for one organization, I would love to know from your perspective, what makes one organization worth building with long term?
That's an awesome question. And I have worked for a lot of great organizations. Even though I left, didn't mean I wanted to leave. I think the best organizations are the ones that allow their people to evolve, not just scale their title, but shift their shape. That's key. I also think a lot of these places, it's their people that make them unique. Yes, they may have a great product, but we hang out with these people more than our own family who we work with. So I have made so many great friends who I now consider family to me. So I look for places that invest in the whole person, whether, that's where personal growth isn't seen as separate from professional success. So I love the organizations that open the door, that are going to allow me to, grow not only professionally, but personally. Like, perfect example, you're graduating from Leadership Cincinnati. And because I worked so hard to have a position, I was fortunate to be one of the youngest ever to be in Leadership Cincinnati, the best class, 45.
Oh, come on now. 48.
But initially, that is an opportunity to network, to potentially get other businesses. Because if you guys who aren't listening, Leadership Cincinnati is compiled of the most top tier regional executives in all industries. Most of the time, you don't know a lot of these people. And it's a year-long immersive program where you really learn about the city, how you can leverage your company, but also your personal assets to help make it a better place. By going through that program, I made 52 best friends. And it was just an amazing thing that I can say almost as like a fraternity. I was in a fraternity in college, and it gave me and especially being younger in these roles and maybe you only have you report into a CEO or someone higher than you, but you're also competitive with your peers. So you're on your own island. And so I have been able to, add these people. I write in my book, I've created a board of directors my entire life, but a lot of these people now are part of my board of directors that if I am scared at work, if I am trying to figure something out, that whole imposter syndrome that I asked you earlier, we still have it no matter what age we are. So it was a way for me to grow as a person, but also to allow me to have an escape, to find additional resources to better myself. And I can't say anything better than what that experience was for me. But, I also think that humility and leadership, it's rare, but when I see it, I stay and I want to give more. And so probably similar to like what you shared, there was so much more that you could be doing to help make the bee so much better. And so I think you just have to sometimes outweigh the pros versus the cons. And so a long-term buy-in doesn't come from perks. I know, I kind of the spokesperson for that. It comes from the purpose and alignment, and psychological safety was one of those things that even at Gannett, when I was there, we also lived in a weird world where we needed people to protect the best people to protect the First Amendment. It doesn't matter if you're on the right or the left. Crazies on both sides. And so I felt with, print kind of decreasing the way it was, and I was brought in to help transform it into a digital media and growing into new audiences. They needed the best people in there to protect the First Amendment. So even though we had all those amazing, rewards and fringe benefits, it also goes back to the principle and the integrity of the organization that you want to protect. And I loved how you put that, maintaining the integrity of the history of the bee. It's, really important. So, lastly, I just kind of want to tie in, chapter 9, it's really about the culture contract. People stay when they can change, but people leave when they have to hide the version they're becoming. And so.
Yes, absolutely. You were talking about protecting the First Amendment. That's obviously something that is top of mind these days too. And like just a general, in the world, it feels like a season of uncertainty. But then
Yes.
there's like on the micro level also seasons of uncertainty for people. And I think that are being compounded by what's going on in the world right now. So give me your best advice for someone who feels like they are in a personal season of uncertainty right now and they're not sure whether they stay or they pivot or they pause. What do you say to them?
One, it's your individual choice. I made a choice. I had a lot more infrastructure in place, and I was also pushed because I made a choice originally to leave corporate America for a job that just didn't work out. And so I'd say silence doesn't mean, being stagnant or stagnation. Sometimes the pause is the most active thing you can do. It's really reflecting, it's evaluating, it's asking the deeper questions, it's reaching out to your board of directors to help guide you. Because a lot of these people have lived it. And, a lot of these people are not just people who are my bosses or people who are older than me. They were peers. They were people who worked for me. I think it's a really important thing to build, community around you, because at the end of the day, and what I'm trying to do at the proper group is change the game, because a lot of people, when they leave organizations and they go to consult, they don't know where to start. And there used to be around not an entire team of marketers like when you're in an agency or something. There used to being like their best friend is the vice president of finance, or their vice president's the head of strategy, or their best friend's head of HR. So what we're trying to do is create a collective of like-minded, seasoned individuals who really have done it, have failed, have succeeded, have worked for big organizations, but we're able to help people who, small to medium businesses to nonprofits, who may not be able to afford a full-time Michael Betz or Corrie, get to their next level of systemic and sustainable growth. I think you really need to ask yourself, am I tired because I'm misaligned, or because I'm beginning to look or stretch, into something new? Not every season needs a decision. That's really important. Some just need awareness. And the next step gets clearer when you stop forcing it. And that's a big thing that we do, is we really force things that shouldn't be. And we do that professionally. We do that in relationships. It's like I have friends who have stayed 20 years longer than they should have in a relationship, but because it was easier. And that's unfortunate. And, we're the only person who can make the decision. So I go back to that, only you can decide. You have to see where you are, because there's a whole lot of things when you make big decisions, financially, family. A lot of people can't leave because they have a mortgage. They have to send their kids to private school, and they need that dependability of a paycheck to be able to survive and to take care of their families. So I think if you're questioning everything, you're probably right where you're supposed to be, because that means you're still engaged. You still care. Yeah. So I love the kind of chapter 2, and it's kind of the season of still. I kind of write about, growth doesn't always look like momentum. It often starts with quiet inventory. And that's so true, because I think we live in a society where gratification is a big thing, getting the big rounds of applause and, the awards and the accolades. That's important to a lot of people, but you got to do the work to get those things. And so I think it's so important, especially to the younger generation. You shouldn't think that you're going to become a vice president 3 years out. I fortunately did become one 7 years out, but it took a lot of work. And it's also all about timing. It's the right place and the right time. Just like when you reflected, it wasn't the right time for you to be the executive director at that time. But then 2 or 3 years later, look how much you were able to reshape yourself and really kind of hone in to an even better person, a stronger person, someone who's leading the organization that has principles, but also has tenure, and then also believes in innovation, and that, yes, we want to stick to the core integrity of the mission, but there's so much more to gain to make it more accessible to, more people. So thanks, Corrie. Those were fun questions. I think these questions really help me think, sometimes growth isn't about going bigger or faster. It's about listening deeper. And that's one thing I always tell everybody is, it's not always the best to be the loudest in the room. And I'm fun. But like when I'm serious and I'm working, I like to listen, observe, and then basically help elevate others with like my skill set to be better. And knowing when your season is shifting, even if no one else sees it yet, it's like knowing who you are. And it goes back to like, really being important and intentional. Is this the right time? Is this right financially for me? And like I said, sometimes you're just forced off a cliff and you're like, I'm damned if I do, I'm damned if I don't. So I'm just going to take that risk. So the best thing about
if you are forced off a cliff, that self-awareness that you're already taking inventory of, right? Like if you know what you're working with, being forced off a cliff, maybe you've got a parachute inside of you, right?
100%. I think we all have parachutes inside of us, and it's really just being resilient. And it's really being, intentional. And it's not just take the next best thing. It's okay to take a break. I write about a sabbatical year. I took a break and I took a sabbatical year, but I didn't just go from all-inclusive resorts and, I did a lot of that. But like I also went and met 150 different people who I knew and didn't know, but I had all these big jobs and titles that like people internally of a company knew what I did, but outside of a company, they had no clue. So I found people with big mouths, big ears, that may not have been able to give me a job, but could open the door for when I'm ready, because I consider going back into corporate America because that's what I'm comfortable with. But then eventually, a lot of these conversations not only helped guide me, but it also helped me workshop what the proper group is. And this book and this podcast, and it introduced me to cool people like you, Corrie. If it wasn't for Beth, I think we would have found our way, but we wouldn't be as close as what we are now. So just remember community. And then also lastly, I think it's, be self-aware, because at the end of the day, you're the only person who can decide when enough is enough, or this is just right for me. And so, yeah, I think that's just part of really what the namesake of the book is. We're all still in the making. So we'll be right back with Corrie, and I'm going to hop back on the, hot mic. I'm always the hot mic. And we'll have more here in a minute. In the Making, out today in print, digital, on Amazon. Get your copy today at amzn.to/4C5S365. The link is in the bio. Let's build something real together. In the Making. Welcome back to In the Making. I'm here with the executive director of the Scripps National Spelling Bee. How cool is that? I'm geeking out a little bit. I know her husband, but I kind of have a friend crush on her. So anyway, so the power of the platform, you get to do some really cool things. And I feel like you lead with impact because you do touch 24,000 schools. Think of how many students are in each of those schools. And then, it's just, not a lot of people can say that has the brand, that has the reach, that has the macro and the micro kind of approach. So, you're leading an institution that, has shaped literally generations of students. How do you balance tradition with innovation, going back to what we were originally talking about, keeping the integrity of the institution intact?
I think the way that we balance tradition with innovation is really about consistently reminding ourselves on the team of the mission of the organization. Scripps as a whole is very mission focused. The spelling bee is very mission focused. And we're always looking back at the course of our history to both learn lessons and also, I think, come to terms with how key the simplicity of the program is to the success of the program. Right. So this started really in 1925 as a newspaper promotion with 9 newspapers from around the country who decided to send regional spelling bee champions to Washington, D.C. This year, I got to go to Akron. I know, don't be too jealous, but I drove up the road to Akron for their regional spelling bee. They're the only regional partner that we have that has been part of this program since 1925. So I was just sitting there to observe. I was watching the competition, all those kids who are sitting up there and thinking, this is the same experience that kids their age in 1925 had. They probably had, less AV, but other than that, it's a kid, a microphone, a dictionary, and that's all that it was, right? Like, and it's so pure to have this competition that has such a low barrier to entry. Like, everybody needs to use language to, in some way or another, to advance in this world and to tell their own stories, to be their own person. And so it's something that I think cannot be underestimated, how foundational this skill is and how ingrained into American society this competition has been. And so we like to make sure that everything that we do is in line with that transition. But I think the biggest focus of our innovation is really about the point of access. And that starts with the materials that are produced here in our office in Cincinnati that then go out all over the country and all over the world. Those are the materials that get into the hands of those millions of kids that participate. And I love thinking about the fact that the people who sit, just right over there from me are picking the words that are going to define a kid's year, right? Like, it's going to be in the hands of a kid, not only here in Cincinnati, but also in California, in Hawaii, in Guam, in Ghana. And they're all going to be learning this set of words. And how do we make those the most inspiring, the most useful, the most educational? Just how do we make that a meaningful experience at every single level? And that's also the access, not just for kids, but also for teachers and how that they use their program throughout the year, right? So how do we make this a motivating foundational piece of the entire literacy picture for a school? And so there's so much innovation that we can do in that. And then again, at the top level of competition, it's how do we keep bringing more attention? How do we keep making the broadcast better? How do we keep getting more PR around this, which has always been a media event for like no other for kids the age that we're working with, which is elementary and middle school. So I think it's remaining true to the core while recognizing those points of greater impact that we can keep innovating around.
That's awesome. Something else that's awesome. 100 years. I heard you say 1925.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. Like, one, how does it feel to lead an iconic institution that has 100 years on it? And then what are some, of your plans? And then what does that milestone mean to you personally?
Yeah, so I would say leading an organization into its 100th year, there's a bit of weight with that, right? It's like, okay, it's been around for 100 years, so you don't be the one to kill it, right? It's really about setting the organization up for success in the next 100 years. We're doing a lot of very cool things to celebrate in the next couple of days right now, but by the time this goes live, it'll be out there. You can visit our website, which is spellingbee.com. And see from there a new history site. So there's beautiful and extensive information about every single year of the competition. So lots of fun facts. There's like the basic information, but there's photos, historical photos that you can dig through. There's storytelling. There's all kinds of stuff. It's been a huge effort and something that we're really proud of, celebrating just the legacy of this whole competition and the impact. We also have coming out in the fall a coffee table book called Beloved, B-E-E, loved, of course, that's available for pre-order now. We're waiting to publish it until after we get the results of this year's competition, because we have to have the 100th anniversary be in the 100th anniversary book, obviously. So that's been really a labor of love for so many people on my team. It looks gorgeous. We cannot wait. And
we'll add a link to the pre-order somewhere on the screen.
Yes, love it. Thank you. Another thing we're doing at Bee Week this year, we have this museum quality exhibition that we're going to have on site with all kinds of artifacts from the history, the first 100 years of the bee, some interactive elements. One of the things that we're going to ask people who go through that exhibit is what is the bee going to look like 100 years from now, right? Like, let them get into that imagination space on the future of the bee.
Hopefully it's not robots.
I know, hopefully not. Hopefully no robots. And then we're also, for the first time ever at Bee Week, we're bringing some of our past champions to compete against each other in what we're calling the Champion Showdown. So you and I, we have some experience with adult spelling bees. This is also going to be an adult spelling bee. Our champion from 1973 is competing, all the way up through 2019, a handful of those. It's going to be really fun.
It reminds me of Jeopardy, when they bring the champions back. That's so cool.
Yeah, so we've got so many other things.
Oh my gosh, you're busy.
Yes.
How do you have time?
But one of the things we're doing, go ahead.
Yeah, no, you go ahead.
Oh, one of the things I'm most excited about, because as I've said a few times, we're really focused on access, is that we're launching a fund with the Scripps Howard Fund that we're calling Beelieve. Again, we get the choice to spell things wrong if we want to. We're the Scripps National Spelling Bee, so we're spelling Beelieve with an extra E, Beelieve. And that is going to be fully focused on providing access to schools and individuals who are trying to remove barriers from participation. So we've got this incredible partnership with the Scripps Howard Fund. We have a founding donor, the Adam R. Scripps Foundation, who've given us a very generous funding and match funding for this entire year of up to $500,000. So any donations that come through to Beelieve are going to be matched. And our first project, we have a partnership with Teach for America, so that for next year, through the Beelieve Fund, any school that is a Teach for America participating school that signs up for the program will be able to do that completely free. So we're just super excited about the opportunities for giving this program, this transformative experience, this lifelong memory to kids in Title I schools across the country.
That's so amazing, and we'll add a link to that when that goes live. And we're anything we can do to help that, because I think, going into the next question, equity and access is just so important. We, like I said, earlier, you can live in B, C, D cities, communities. You can go to B, C, D schools, but if you put more into it and give back, it's the only way that things are going to get better. And it's the only way that people who don't have access will get access. So I love that. So how do you nurture equity and access in a space that's historically been high pressure?
Yeah, equity and access really has been the focus for me since I stepped into this role. There's so much learning that has gone into this for me. Some of that is learning from those 24,000 schools that we have. So, what kind of data can we gather from them? What kind of surveys can we have? We're going into, like I just mentioned, we just launched this partnership with Teach for America. We're doing some learning from them as well, their experiences with our materials, with our program in their schools, in their particular environment, and making the program just easier to take on, easier to implement, and again, just removing any barrier that we can. I think another part of that is our communications, our storytelling, how we link the experience at that classroom level with those grade level lists up to that national competition. So making sure that kids understand every single level of this competition is something to be celebrated, something you can take pride in, and something that's going to give you motivation to continue excelling in your life.
I love that. Well, this was a beautiful little segment that I think it's amazing what you guys have contributed to society, what you guys are going to continue to contribute to society. And I think the key takeaway is, leadership is legacy in motion, especially when it serves something bigger than you. And obviously 100-year organization that you can literally say, every president, Oprah Winfrey, all these huge people know what the spelling bee is. And that is so cool.
We're literally older than sliced bread.
Yeah, you're older than sliced bread. So.
In the Making, out today, in print, digital, on Amazon. Get your copy today at amzn.to/4C5S365. The link is in the bio. Let's build something real together. In the Making.
This year, the B's keeping it 100. A, B, C. Come on.
And deliver!
That is correct.
Wow, what a night!
Watch the Scripps National Spelling Bee live May 28th and 29th at 8, 7 Central on ION.
Welcome to In the Making podcast. Please like and subscribe and engage. We want to hear from you. In the Making is now available for digital pre-order on Amazon. Get your copy today at amzn.to/4C5S365. The link is in the bio. Let's build something real together. In the Making.